Good evening, everyone. Welcome to AI Curate Webinar Specials CXO series. Topic of discussion today is the new code of leadership at GCC, strategic considerations. Today we have with us Supriya Dhanda, Vice President and Country Manager of Western Digital India. And this session will be moderated by Samir Dhanrajani, CEO and co-founder AI Curate Advisory and Consulting. Before we start the session, a few housekeeping rules. Please be on mute for uninterrupted listening experience. Leave your questions in the chat window, so we will take those up for Q&A. This webinar is being recorded and this playback video will be made available on our website, www.aicurate.ai. Now I would like to introduce Supriya. Supriya Dhanda is the Vice President and Country Manager of Western Digital India. She leads India's strategic charter and its expansion, key customer relationships, government relations, sustained growth of research and development capability, and serves as a spokesperson for the corporate brand in India. Her fusion of business acumen, strategy, and organizational development has driven high-performance culture and strong growth for India region. She has more than 22 years of experience and has held several leadership roles in HR, has been an entrepreneur and anchored mergers and acquisitions. Prior to her roles at Western Digital, she has served with reputed technology companies including General Electric, Alcatel-Lucent, and SanDisk. She is a proud recipient of the recognition Top 100 Best Companies to Work for Women in India, Working Mother and Avatar Study 2016 and 2019, twice when Western Digital India participated in the study. Supriya is passionate about technology and people. She strongly believes in equality at the workplace and in giving back to the community for building a sustainable future. Supriya, thank you very much for making time to be in our CXO seminar today. I would now like to hand over the session to Samir. Samir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, NK, for the introductions. And Supriya, it's an honor and privilege to have you at our webinar specials. Must say, I've been waiting for this session, specifically given the theme of the topic is so appropriate to be coming out of you. And in the next 60 minutes, my intent would be kind of really coming out with almost a playbook, what we can have for GCC leaders in this specific times where we are talking about so much of disruption, so much of, I would say, an aspect where we're talking about almost a new rule of leadership, which should really emerge. So thank you so much for taking time from your hectic schedule.
Thank you, Samir. Excited and look forward to the 60 minutes and look forward to an interaction. So thank you for inviting.
Awesome. Supriya, I'll also touch upon some of the specifics about your profile, which intrigued me, but I'll come to that in the later part of the discussion. Just to get the ball rolling, transformation, innovation, disruption has become the new charter for the GCCs. And GCCs, as you know more than many of us, have gone through a great evolution. I mean, just being from a kind of a, let's say, cost arbitrage center to a value accretive kind of a, let's say, hub. Over there, specifically when we talk about leadership, there's a great thing resting on their shoulders. Change management, value creation. But the question, first of all, just to kind of get it kick-started is, when you're drawing your growth agenda, your journey in terms of business planning, what are the key things you're keeping in mind when it comes to the whole aspect about value creation, the whole aspect about innovation and transformation? And do you see a trend in terms of GCC leaders also looking at this thing as at a much more closer lens in terms of a business vector, or you still believe there is a lot to be done over there?
Very loaded question, to get the ball rolling. Thank you for asking that. See, You touched upon something very simple and beautiful, that when you look at GCCs, you've all seen and heard and being a part, being a part of how the GCCs have evolved. They've all started with a journey of setting up. We looked at validation lab setups. We've looked at small setups. They've looked at establishing proof of concepts. Cost arbitrage was a hugely important value enabler. And we thought that was the value that we are looking at giving to the company. That was pretty much looking at the bottom line. We've had a great journey in the last 20 years or so, and I think it's accelerated a lot, I would say, in the last decade, and even more so in the last 5 years, wherein we are seeing a lot of product line shaping from India. We are seeing business lines completely having multiple complex products kind of being done out of India. I have witnessed that in the kind of companies that I have worked for, and I've read and heard about all of that. Today, we are at a very critical juncture, I would say, and it's not like we haven't said that a few back. I mean, every year when we look at what we can do more for GCC, for the parent company, and for our economy overall, I think we do see we have a role to create and role to do a lot more, that we are being chartered with. I think from looking at, I would say there are 2-3 aspects that I would touch upon. We have looked at historically to say, what does the HQ want us to do? And I think that's a very significant part of the overall business, and to say where GCC can add value. And I think that continues to be critical. I would say we have established ourselves with a lot of credibility, talent, value differentiation, great product lines being delivered. I think now the time is to say, can we do more? And it's about leading from India. It's about having your own stake, your own skin in the game to say, well, you know what? I know I have done this. My teams have done this. We've done it successfully. But now let me have a playbook for India. Let me see what that playbook look like. And that playbook cannot be done without partnership with HQ. And without taking your India leadership, your A team, I would say, along. So I think having a very prelim dialogue with A team to understand what is it that we can do. We have developed some capabilities in delivering these product lines. We are probably doing sustenance on a lot more complex product lines, even if you don't own all of them in India. All that putting together, coupled with new technologies that the world is throwing at us in terms of machine learning, deep learning algorithms, can we do something more? And what does that more look like? I think broadly getting that outline set up, looking at what the business wants in terms of HQ, where we are going in terms of HQ is always looking at investing in new technologies, new product lines, new customer segments, and see where we can play that role. I think then looking at having a very clear stakeholder discussion to say, this is what we think we can do. And we have a vision, we have a strategic understanding, and we know we have the resource and the competencies, and maybe a little bit of investment, of course, that we need to do. But however, this is what is your view. And I think that is something that I would say we need to do a lot more. The times are unprecedented, and we will get, I'm sure you will have a few questions around the times we are living in. But I think it's about getting that stake right. It's about getting your skin and your voice in the game right. And having that leadership from India defined, from strategic people, capability, and of course, a higher value that you can drive.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'll just take a cue from what you said, Supriya. And you mentioned about these unprecedented times and these calls for something where we say, okay, now is the time to really reflect upon and say which path of the journey we would like to kind of enter. Now, there are gyrations from the market, there are macroeconomic factors. Now, specifically when it comes to being a GCC leader, how do you kind of swim through these uncharted territories? What's the kind of a lens you wear when it comes to looking at some of these unforeseen circumstances, instances, market kind of, let's say, forces impacting a lot of things? And strategically, when you are looking at, let's say, the picture of, let's say, the GCC from here on, what's the kind of also the lens you say, okay, these are the few things I would like to do now. These are the few things which should be pushed back. So is there something, and I'm also taking a very generic approach, is there something emerging over there? Because we believe disruptions, some of these kind of, let's say, absolutely kind of, let's say, aspects of being ambiguous will remain. So just would like to know about what do you feel about this?
So, I'm glad we are taking a generic view here, an overview, because there is no finite answer. And I think every leader has to figure out what suits their condition, their context, and the situation best. But attempting at it to say, we've all heard of the VUCA war. We've all read about it. I mean, personally, for me, Samir, when I would watch a sci-fi movie with everything disappearing, suddenly a new thing coming, you talk about Matrix, Martian, we've seen so many of these. And we never believe that that is the world we are going to live in, where suddenly something is going to happen as unprecedented at a scale like COVID, and the economy is going to go, at a lockdown. I don't think you and I have ever imagined, or we've ever discussed, or any webinar or a seminar to that discussion has taken place. We've had Great Depression, we've had multiple other economic downturns. So this is like a lockdown. We've seen that, and this is global. So one of the things that has emerged is that all of us at the economy, I think we are facing it together. It has never been a situation that I have seen that I think there has been a difference that the economy has seen in Europe, Asia, Americas. I think this is the time when everybody is looking at what is the negative, dip in the business that we are looking at. Even if it's sectoral and there are differences in that, I mean, there are some sectors which are more impacted than the others. But the fact that we are all adversely impacted, I think that is a reality that we are facing today. I think there is an equalizer of sort. There is a certain empathy that has come in. And therefore, my view here is that one needs to look around outside, continue to scan the environment and see what is it that the other industry is doing? What is it that my peers are doing? On a day-to-day scenario, we tend to kind of wear ourselves down with our jobs at hand, and they're complex jobs. It's easier said than done, but uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. A-level positions have, their own complexities, and I'm sure those who are tuning into today's webinar would more agree that this is not an easy job. You got to look at the market, industry, media, brand, demand, supply, logistics. I mean, a lot of things that you have to look at. It's a very multifaceted lens that you need to see. And above all, we have seen there are fundamental shifts that have happened. Let's talk about those shifts for a second. We've all now entered a lockdown. I just said that. We're all working from home. While there are some sectors that cannot, at least the sector that I represent from a technology, a lot of mobilization work from home has happened. So we've all spoken that the digital future will look like this, it will look like that. I am saying the digital future is here. You are saying that. All of us are seeing it. With more than 95% of mobilization of jobs from home, with huge digital IT infrastructure being the backbone of what we are able to do, with huge more need for collaboration tools to kind of get authored, so that there is a lot of work that requires whiteboarding, charting, discussing, looking at each other and kind of engaging. If we are going to shift that to a digital environment, then I think there is a lot more collaboration tools that need to get authored. So as much as these are challenging times and we have to figure out simple things like prioritization, cost is going to be under pressure. I think industry and sectors are going to undergo that. And therefore, a very simple skill that we thought was a prioritization. How do you prioritize? I think we have to now take a very sharper microscopic lens to say which program is finally more critical than the others. I think we cannot assume that we can have normalcy. The new normal is a significantly shrunk and different normal than what the previous normal pre-COVID was. So I think prioritization is something very critical. Liaising with our stakeholders to understand this is the way I'm thinking of prioritizing. Is that in line with you? Waiting for HQ directions is far more critical at this point of time, I think, than before. So I think that is clear. Looking at digital, the entire future, to say we were looking at digital imperatives, we thought it's a few years away. I think it is here, and therefore our acceleration of those imperatives and initiatives has to be much faster. And at the end of the day, we all say technology is important, but people and technology, the balance is extremely important. Infusion of new technology is there, but if you don't have people reskilled, understanding and taking them along, I think it's equally more critical to take people and technology along, and only then we can do business. So I think it's not an either or situation. These times have told us if technology could alone run the world, you and I wouldn't be sitting and discussing what the trend is. So I think balancing and putting people first and using technology as an enabler, I think a lot of things we need to do, but prioritizing top 3, 4 is going to be the key.
Awesome. So I take something from your narrative, what you just said, and I will just take some of your perspectives on that. Now, you mentioned about this A-level position comes with a very onerous task. It's very, very kind of difficult in terms of looking at a different navigation in terms of how to lead. Now, some of the specifics sticking onto GCC, C-level advocacy, the whole aspect what you mentioned about building those relationship with the HQs in a matrix environment, stakeholder management, the ecosystem building in terms of working with different stakeholders, be it the government or let's say the external players in the market, operational dexterity, we're talking about talent building. Now, looks like, which is from outside, it's easy, but it's a damn kind of, let's say, I would say, difficult challenge. More so, but if I take your narrative, compounding the whole aggravation is these macroeconomic kind of external environment. Now, specifically now, and this is more like a kind of a recommended and prescriptive approach I want to take from you for GCC leaders, what are the strategic consideration they need to keep in mind to lead their units and hubs? Given all this thing, what I talked about, I know it's loaded kind of a thing, but we'll do some kind of a, let's say, peeling off gradually hearing your narrative. But I just want to start with this overarching question, please, and take your views.
So, great question, Samir, and I love the fact that let's peel off slowly because there are, again, it's a multifaceted, multi-pronged question, and I think there is. I shy away. I love the way you say that. Let's look at prescription. I would leave prescription to doctors because I think they figured it out, but even they're in a well, they don't have it. So I think even there, I mean, it's like experiment, trial and error. But I would say I'm happy to share what worked for me when I was at the helm of this role within the Western Digital India context. And for those who can look at it, of course, draw learnings from there and see how that fits into their context. Because in today's world, living in times like this, I think even my context is completely changed. And I'm looking at the playbook completely differently today than what I was used to. And we'll touch upon those.
Yeah, we can just punctuate that with some of the anecdotes, what you believe you've learned in the past, or kind of just that will be great, please.
So a couple of years back when I took the role on, and the journey started even before, I was acting in the role for about 2 years. And when the role was getting offered to say, do you want to look at it? At first, the answer was no. I come from a functional background and I thought I was comfortable. And sometimes when I look back, I may very openly say that I had reached a stage where I was like, I am comfortably complacent. You can call it beautifully, with a lyrical, poetic way to say comfortably numb. But I was happy with my world. I knew the answers and I was comfortable. And then there was this thing to say, we think of you as a candidate. Do you want to look at it? And I was like, really? I've been acting in it for a year. Let me see if I want it. And I think when I raised my hand and I said I wanted it, I could see the want deepen. And I knew I couldn't wait to get my hands on the role. And when it was finally closed and I got it, Samir, it started a completely new, different problem. So they say when you ask, every stage is different. Wanting a role and going through the process is one. Now, getting a role and delivering on that is another. Acing it and delivering it to the expectations and meeting all of that of stakeholders, I think that's a completely different deal. So some examples that I would share, some anecdotes I would share was, I think it was very important for me to say, what is the vision? Personally, there are a lot of values that we hold dear. For me, strategic thinking, visioning, future forwarding, and thinking of what I can do as a leader and therefore have that, consensus building, dialogue, discussion with my team. I think for me, that was critical. It was a plus that I came from a non-technology, per se domain. I came from a functional. It was okay for me to say, I don't understand that this cannot be done. I remember there was once Jet Airways CEO who said, I want someone who doesn't understand, because sometimes understanding kind of layers and gives you a reason to say this can't be done. So when you come from a position of not knowing, it sometimes is an advantage. I think for me particularly, that was an advantage. I didn't have theories to say this can be done or cannot be done. I thought everything can be done. So I think very quickly figuring it out in the first 30, 60, 90 days that GE taught us beautifully was, what is my 30, 60, 90-day charter as a country head? Understanding, meeting with my A team in India to say, what is it we can do, like I previously mentioned. Visiting US, which is where we are headquartered, and meeting the CEO and his first line, which was a set of 14 to 17 executives, and having 3 things very simple. This is what India does. This is what we think we want to do more. Do you think this makes sense, or what is it that you can champion, sponsor, or completely help me alter the direction and do something else? I think these were 3 simple objectives. The meetings were about an hour to an hour and a half long, and they kind of provided me a view. My learning was there were a lot of leaders who, because there are different things we do in India, we tend to be predominantly R&D focused. You don't expect someone in manufacturing to know complete lay of the land of India. Everybody's busy, and everybody in today's world runs with these 2-minute capsules to say, what does India do? These are 3 things we do. I think having a very orderly discussion to say, this is what we do and these are the capabilities, I think that was my job, to educate my stakeholders on that. And I think that was well done, hopefully. We came back, I came back with a set of understanding that this is what, and we actually have a very clear, articulate playbook for India. Then sitting down with India leaders and saying, your day job looks like this, but over and above, you have a responsibility to be an India leader, and you're responsible for innovation ecosystem building, innovation culture. Now you're responsible for market development, understanding what the market looks like, and therefore what are the numbers. Sitting with someone else to say you're responsible for culture, and therefore how talent is going to be reskilled, upskilled, or moved along. And I think giving that kind of scope was something that I would say stakeholder management. And it starts with, I think the beauty is to continue to that, keep that going. I've traveled far more in the last 2 years than I've traveled, I would say, in my last 10 years, because you need to build on it. Then you need to do a stakeholder understanding to say who's very much on your side, the early adopters, the laggards. You can use multiple, theories and multiple graphs to this, so that is how I could figure out these are very quick stakeholders who are ready and aligning, and therefore I can do a lot more with them. Then picking on local industry pieces, I'll quickly touch upon. While you're saying you can do more, and GCCs have a great role to be looked at in R&D, I was particularly interested to be looking at India as a market. Data localization was just coming. We are a company that builds data solutions, and we got a Flash. I thought that'll be a great market for India to be looking at, and we can invest a lot more. So I think liaising with government, liaising with industry, networking with leaders as yourself and others across the industry, understanding what worked for you, delving a little bit into the startup ecosystem, Make in India understanding. So I think really broadening, opening up the windows and the doors and saying this is what the outside world looks like. I think having an understanding of India, going deep and wide, mapping it with your stakeholders, getting a playbook. Getting a playbook ready again.
Sorry, can we have the participants go on mute? Sorry, Supriya, there was some background. Okay, great. Please continue.
Consistently being at it, I think that resilience was the name of the game. Again, visioning was the name of the game. Consistent stakeholder management was the name of the game. Being inclusive, and looking at beyond beyond yourself. Because I think if someone thought that they have all the answers, I know for one, I don't have all the answers, but I definitely know someone else who has the answers. So I think looking at being very vulnerable and asking those answers. So these are some of the things, Samir, that work. We've done excellent work with the government of India. We can touch upon that in some time from now. So and we've got great media, coverage. We are looking at stories. And just yesterday, we were talking about 1 terabyte kind of being a great flagship product that we designed, developed in India. So I think these are some of the examples to say, get articulate, very, very articulate on your thoughts, and get them mapped, and delve into local industry. Don't shy away, and don't just stick to your order of the day. Just go out, learn. Learning is the only new thing that is going to help us stay afloat with, and do our jobs better.
Wonderful. I think the rendition, what you came out with, Supriya, and I was trying to absorb while you were articulating, and very well articulated in a very lucid manner what you said, that first of all, you acknowledged about some of the things which you believe needs to be kind of developed as a leader, because as you rightly mentioned in the earlier part of a narrative, the space at that A level is empty. I mean, it's very vulnerable kind of a thing. And at some level, it's also about how do you kind of cope with those pressures which sometimes doesn't get demonstrated, kind of a thing. And I want to kind of really now double down on some of these things, what you talked about, and would love to hear your views. You talked about empathy, thing around this whole aspect about resilience, adaptability. Now, specifically in the GCC side today, where transformation, innovation is the name of the game, and there's so much happening in conjunction with the HQ, the talent is the foremost when it comes to the minds of the GCC leader, because they are the ones who are really kind of looking at building that top of the league GCC centers for the leaders. How do you kind of create and cultivate some of these attributes? And I'll come to the culture space, because GCC and culture cannot kind of be separated. So I'll take that as a separate, but specifically some of these things around empathy, resilience, adaptive qualities. Now, the reason I'm asking, Supriya, is also would love to take your thoughts. Certainly, as you said, the space has changed. We've got folks who are gig workers. We have shared workplaces. Now that may go for a change, but we also have millennials kind of a thing. And at some point of time, there is a hard, I would say, understanding. Okay, we understand what they are up to, but we don't know whether they have really contextualized. So how do you see that? And I'm really asking because I want, and this is also good for our global participants, they want to understand how does a GCC leader thinks in those directions.
Wow, it's like really getting into the mind, and you would be able to do that, right? Samir, you're at the end of the cutting edge technology, right? Draw a brain map, do some AI, and figure out what Supriya is thinking right now, and tell me, and I'm sure I will 99.9% or more say yes to it. I dread that
Just
day.
say that astrologers and AI professionals have failed because they could not detect COVID. So blame us.
Yeah, on a softer aspect, wondering what women want, men want, what leaders want. But rarely we think about what followers want. Rarely. I used to always wonder, there is so much literature on what leadership is all about. I think there needs to be a parallel literature on what followership is all about. I don't think we give due importance. Whereas even now, when you and I are on webinar, a lot of people who are tuning in, who are leaders in their own space. So I think getting into that mind space, thinking from their perspective to say what do they want, it's easier said than done again. Because sometimes I would say it very simply. I'll try at least. I want to get into your shoes, right? This is what we simply say. Sympathy and empathy are very different. Empathy is about stepping into your shoes. My point is that when I see this, I'm trying to step into your shoes, but I haven't removed my shoes yet. How can I?
Would you like to elaborate that, please? Yeah, that's a very good point what you said. Yes.
I'll come to that. So I'm just saying it's a very simple thing. I can only step into your shoes if I'm ready to remove what I'm wearing, which simply in a context of leadership is if I'm asking a question and I can't even have the patience, basic patience to listen to an answer. And if the answer is something very different from what I expect, we all expect an answer probably. We all think we know what we want and what others want. And my simple thing is, step outside your own zones, change your filters always. If you're wearing a green filter, wear a blue. Very simple. Wear some different filter. And if possible to live a life, then absolutely be filterless. See the people for who they really are, because empathy is not something that cannot be practiced, that cannot be developed. There are all these leaders are born or made. You've seen me as a very transparent person. I'm not someone who comes with a dose of empathy. Someone who's low on empathy, who has been low on empathy as a quotient. And I was given feedback to say, well, develop some of it. And I'm like, how do you develop? And I think my mom spotted it early on that I have low empathy, and I should have listened to her more than perhaps my dad. But over the years, when you're in a position, it is kind of incumbent. I think it's imperative that you listen to what people are saying. So I think feedback during your career is extremely important. There's enough and more literature. Feedback is a gift. I really don't know how many of us truly practice it, because good feedback, welcome, love it, thank you. Bad feedback, well, I have to change some of my beliefs to be able to make way for that feedback. So I think there's a lot of work we need to do inward to be able to practice.
So I'm sorry what you mentioned about this feedback. And this correlates to we as leaders, as in you as a leader, managing a GCC, which is on the cutting edge. Do you take feedback from your team down below about you as a professional, as a leader? And I'm being direct, pardon my candor over there, but maybe some of the attempt of this discussion is also to kind of unpeel Supriya as a leader.
Feel free, as long as you appreciate what you see, Samir. I have no problem with the unpeeling. You just have to like what you unpeel. So let's have that, side. Thanks for asking. It's a direct question, and I will give you a very straight and direct and honest answer. A few months back, I would say between September, October, November, we ran a process wherein I had been almost closing 2 years in my role. And there was a feedback. It was not self-initiated, but there was a feedback process that the corporate initiated. And I got tons of feedback. With due respect to the process and the corporate and those who gave feedback, there was a lot of great feedback, good feedback to say what is working, great, brand with the industry, media, taking people along. Let me park that aside. The more significant part is the feedback that I got, that things I needed to improve as a leader. I tend to push is what I was told, and therefore there was feedback to say, can you go slow? And the second big feedback was empathy. And I think both of them are coupled when you see them. They're kind of twined. They, if you see there is a trend to this, you tend to push when you lack empathy. You tend to push less when you understand that there are people. I read somewhere, everybody has a story of their own to carry. I think, it was said by Michelle Obama, all you need to do is pause and then learn and have the patience to hear it. And that is, I think, a miracle drug that works very well for developing empathy. So that is what I was given feedback. And I will come to very quickly to a stage where I have solicited feedback voluntarily, and I'm waiting to see what that looks like. COVID-19 happened and it gave me a situation and a challenge to say, let's practice that. All of us are saying empathy is the top quality, and that is not something that came naturally to me. And now I will talk about the example to say, how is it that I've been able to practice? Each of my calls, there are tons of calls that all of us are there on, right? Each of my calls starts in the first 15 minutes to only say, hey, Samir, how are you doing? Because if I don't understand what the headspace is, where is this individual? What is the heart saying right now? All of us are fearing mortality. All of us have fears of safety, anxiety, economic downturn. I mean, there is tons that we are dealing with at a personal level. And of course, you add to a GCC leader's role, there is this entire business being responsible for jobs, we're responsible for careers, strategy, customer demand, supply, capabilities, programs, reordering. So I think the world is complex. So starting that with how are you doing, how are you feeling, making sure you tune into that frequency, pause, really listen. And you don't do that with one or two. It's not like the, very different cultural way to say, hey, how are you doing? And before you answer, you realize the person has walked off. You tune in, you listen in with your heart, and you know that whatever the person is saying, you're listening. Someone said, my wife is part of the school, and I realize she's now moving the entire curriculum online and she's struggling with it. Well, that's the real problem this person is, because the time goes for this individual to teach. Sometimes else, I remember I have a lot of duties that I've taken on personally because I have a large family, and I've taken to the kitchen because that was the need of the hour, and over a period of time, I liked it. So, if someone asks me how my day is a mix of taking care of the household and the corporate. It earlier used to be pretty much one, but now it's combined. And many women, many men are entering kitchen and doing a lot more than they were doing before. So I think just tuning in, asking, and then getting to business objectives and agenda will help you understand where the headspace is. What is it that people are feeling? So I think that small thing has worked, and there have been many others. Fast forward 6 months from the last feedback to now. I just last week in my call asked all my staff, and this is a team of 32, 33 very seasoned leaders who sit on the staff. And I said, hey, you gave me some feedback. I'm working on it. And this time has given me opportunity to practice. Go slow. If something cannot be done, don't have rigid watertight processes around compliance, safety. We said, you can take a call. Just let us know what call you're taking so we can support you. Allowing for different leadership styles to emerge, allowing for variation to the processes, and still kind of sinking back to say you have overall bird's eye view to say what's happening. I think those are some of the things, Samir, but feedback has been important. Changing and tailoring your style to the context and people's needs is extremely important. And you can only do that when you're willing to listen, when you're willing to remove your filter, remove your shoes and step into your shoes. I think that's the only way to do it. And fundamentally be, humble and vulnerable and say, yes, I am not perfect. I am work in progress, and I don't intend to be perfect. Allow me to make errors. And the point is, I will make new errors every time, and I will learn from my previous errors and do the same for others. Forgive easily, fail quickly, and then get your success, set towards what the future is taking you. Does that answer your question, Samir?
Look, it was so absorbing and engaging, Supriya, because very candidly, it's very rare when leaders open up. And your thing about that whole sentence around, hey, listen and pause, or rather pause and listen, and really opening up the filters kind of a thing, it's something which is, I would say, great piece of suggestion for many of the leaders to understand, because eventually, as a person and professional, people would like to approach you. As you said, that when you got that feedback, you walked up to them and asked, hey, I'm improving. I'm kind of, let's say, attempting to kind of really take that in the spirit, it will eventually make you a solid professional. But really, does this disclosure happen? So I love that what you spoke about. But at the same time, I'm also taking this juncture of taking one more attribute about this whole leadership within the GCC space culture.
Mhm.
Reams of papers and content have been written about this. Hey, let's mirror this culture of the HQ with the GCC, and we'll have that very symbiotic kind of a, let's say, way of how talent works on both the side. Easier said than done. Supriya, as you know, while HQ would like to mimic the culture, but there are nuances, there are subtleties within our geography, India specifically. Now, when you took this role, what attempts you made about this? And generically, if I talk about how do you treat culture as an attribute specific to the GCC leadership?
I think culture is very significant, Samir. I don't think as a GCC leader we can afford to ignore. It's almost like you realize when you are in the C-level jobs, whatever you say, do also tends to form, and be a part of the culture. We learned early on the say-do ratios, so please, and we read about it in papers on the political news that we all read. Someone is saying X, but doing Y, and how that X, or Y minus X is just an equation which is not working. So I think it's good to be very, very vigilant that you as a leader are also needed to, it's like walk the talk, we can all talk the phrases. And you said reams of paper and, research has been consumed. Today, when we talk about, I'll take a moment and step away from culture and say, talk about inclusivity. There was a time when everybody thought that HQ culture, most of the, especially if you talk about American companies or other European companies, we need to mirror that culture. I think there was a time when we were looking at aping it. There was a time when we were saying that's the culture we need to. And we were ready to walk away from what our Indianness or what our culture is. Today, the world is opening up to inclusivity at a very different level. HQ has realized that as much as HQ values need to be permeating across, there has to be an inclusive, safe space created for a microculture to be included to. India can have its culture, Japan can have its culture, China can have, other countries can have, and yet all of us are now loosely threaded, but nicely coupled and aligned with the overall culture. So I think there is no one overarching culture that all of us need to say, yes to. I think we need to be proud of who we are. And what does that mean for us? Get a definition around that going. In India, we talk about resilience, and there are enough and more articles written to say how we always get it right. We get it right in the end, but we do. How we always deliver, at the end of the day. And we have a strong culture of execution excellence. We have a strong culture of being a very resilient nation. That is something we've seen hard times, we've seen, and therefore we know that we will get past this crisis too. So I think understanding what that is, we are very culturally, we work and we bond together. For us, we just can't, we take the issue sometimes personally to say that if someone says, Supriya, you didn't do well, it may not be about project, it may be about me. And therefore this is very different from perhaps an American context where you can stay with the issue and walk away. I think we tend to kind of, be a little bit more personal about it. And you see Don Corleone of The Godfather will say, well, it's not personal, it's strictly business. Maybe in India we see it differently, and maybe some of us see it differently. So I think understanding what a microculture is and defining that a little bit, understanding what the corporate culture is and aligning and kind of loosely threading it, I think that's the way the world is approaching. So I think there is no one overarching culture. That is one. Second, you see what works for you. We've got excellent talent in terms of R&D in India. We clearly know that we are the solution, and we've seen multiple research being written how we can be the talent base for the world to come and, for the world to look at us. So I think innovation is extremely critical. How is it that you as an R&D, you as a GCC that is responsible for that, continue to invest in innovation? And innovation is rarely going to come from, I would say, people who've been doing the jobs repeatedly over years. It's a higher probability for it to come from the young generation, the millennials, the Gen Z that you spoke about. So how is it that you're going to have inclusivity, which is level free, but you're a more networked organization? You can walk up to anyone, anyone can walk up to you. Easier said than done, but I don't think it's complex. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. It's like I said, George Bernard Shaw said, right? You can either be, logical and adapt to the world. That's a very reasonable man. Or you can be unreasonable and say, I'll make the world adapt to me. My sense is our millennials and Gen Z are in that category, in that space. So allowing them, asking them what changes do you want and working around them, enabling them, giving them tools, culture, experts, talk, getting, industry luminaries as yourself and others and talking to them, telling them the entire mapping of how the business value chain works. We have something we do very beautifully at Western Digital India, independently productive program, where we take these university hires, and we take them to a 3 to 4 week of transition, completely immersive experience into what the business is all about. And at the end of the day, when they go back to their jobs, we have seen within a year, less than a year, so many of these new college graduates file patents, file trade secrets. And then we are like, wow, that's all? A 3-week program, but intense immersion. These kids are so intelligent. The young talent is outstanding, and we have great stories. We've had new products. There was one proof of concept done purely by new college graduates. So I think opening up, keeping an understanding of what your current culture is, kind of threading it in getting a story around that. I think in India we need to do better story selling, market ourselves a little better, and I think we can learn a lot from the Western world on this. And then including our millennials and Gen Zs, and continuing to focus on innovation, continuing to focus on other aspects of inclusivity, the other gender, 50% of the women population, and we can't ignore they're huge consumers of products across the world. I think those are some of the tenets, and being conscious, very conscious as a leader, which is why if I stitch this back to my previous comment, I need to get feedback on how I'm doing. I need to have my own conscience keepers in the system who can freely walk up to me and tell me, you know what, this language was, I think you were a little tough. Okay, can I step back? I think being conscious of that, mindful. There is this wonderful book, Triggers, by Marshall Goldsmith. It tells you how your environment can take you for a joyride, and it's the small things that you may tend to not focus. And those could be derailers for you. And when you derail, organization also takes a back seat, and there is this huge productive loss. So I think these are some of the things I would say you got to keep your eyes focused on, very sharp and very focused.
Awesome. I think what you rightly said, if the leaders just flip, I think the whole culture also just evaporates. But having said that, and I was trying to absorb some of the things what you talked about, inclusivity being one of the foremost over there. There's also an element around this, the GCC leadership. There are two sides of the GCCs, one which are heavily oriented towards the heavy processes on the BPM technology side, those hard hitters in terms of the scores of people who are actually employed out here in India or specifically outside of India from a GCC point of view. On the other side, there are niche, boutique, but evolving, growing set of GCCs who are heavily invested, as you rightly said, on innovation, research. Now, one of the tenet of the innovation research, Supriya, is also about this whole, hey, fail fast and scale up quickly. And then there is a leeway over there. There is a window of tolerance, which is also linked to the culture. Now, specifically in your experience, how have you created this whole culture, if I may call it, of innovation, spreading that whole thing around, look, the failures are okay, and also the feedback mechanism I hear quite often, you nicely said, look, it's a continuous feedback loop, which is evolving in the organization. But specifically on the research and innovation, I want to take your views. How do you propel research and innovation in the GCC? And I'm taking a very generic view, which is where some of your kind of, let's say, even anecdotes will also help, please.
Sure. So being a failed entrepreneur myself, right? That was the time when I think it feels like it's decades back, but your failures.
I don't think so. Many of the global participants are aware. So good you told.
So being a failed entrepreneur, so when I was failing, it's almost like my heart was in my mouth and saying, "Oh God, I thought I had it figured. And there were these theories, right? If you start your business in a garage, you're going to be successful. We come up with all these generalizations and beautiful stories, and they don't work for some, they work for some, and God bless them, and happy for those that work. It didn't work for me. And now when I look at it to see what was wrong, you realize that there is you in it. And therefore, I would say one thing was clear. There was a huge appetite for risk. As much as you fail, my coach told me, it's okay to fail. All of us take it to heart. I think we love winning. We are very competitive. And in a land of a 1.3, 1.4 billion, when the opportunities come, I think all of us are competing for the same things. So I think there is this general sense of being a developing nation and opportunities, and, the gap is huge. So I think we tend to be competitive. But some of the things that you need to learn from your failure is very important. Failure is not bad in itself. I think it's bad don't learn from it. When we don't say that, what did we learn? Like I said, I will make errors. I'm human. And I want to take pride in being a human. Point is, I hope I don't repeat my errors. So I think learning, essencing out what was that failure about, what are the 1 or 2, 3 things that you learned, and therefore you're comfortable now, that's part of who you are going forward, and you've distilled your learnings. I think that's very important. It's not otherwise we would say, go fail, go fail, go fail. Go fail, get your learnings, and make sure your next thing is a success. That's pretty much, I think, the entire theory and the narrative that we want to focus on. Coming to Western Digital India, I wish I could say we got this right, because if you take a quick poll with our employee base, which is hugely talented base that I'm very, very proud of, I think we need to do more of, Sameer. I don't think we've pretty much have the key to this lock yet. I wish we had unlimited resources, this time on our end to say, let's have tinkering projects. I think the key lies in that. The key lies in having a little bit of a bench. Though I cannot be, held to this in times of COVID, because we are now living in a very different reality. So don't apply COVID to this for what I'm saying. But if there wasn't a situation like this where cost wasn't at pressure, when the April sales for some companies did not record a zero, I think if these weren't the times, I would say having a little bit of a time to be able to tinker on a project, having, programs like we have a wonderful innovation program wherein we say Innovation Bazaar, which is look at your problems, look at what you're dealing with. There is automation, there are new ideas, new products. We invite that. We do it every year. We do it across our regions. And that's something which is really a best practice. We offered it to the government. We run something called Data Innovation Bazaar. We ran it in 2018. We're running it now, Data Innovation Bazaar 2020, where we are looking at partnering with government, startup, West India, MeitY, where we are saying, as much as Western Digital India is about innovation and Western Digital Worldwide is about innovation and creating new products and dealing with new technologies and dealing and satisfying our customers, we want to take our best practice and take it outside and partner with the Indian ecosystem and look at problems that India is facing as a nation in urban transportation, mobility, and all of that, and see how we can solve those. So I think this year we decided, as much as we run Innovation Bazaar internally as a company, how about opening Data Innovation Bazaar also to our employees? So we're going to do a second edition where we will open. So I think constantly having programs like that, valuing intellectual property creation, trade, secret programs, intellectual property, we do value this. We incentivize some of these. And I think that is where we are saying culture takes multiple elements to come together. The companies need to invest in some of these initiatives wherein employees, our talent, can look beyond their day-to-day job and get a pause, hold, and step away and say, hey, can I solve this? Hey, can I do this software thing different? Can I do this different? I think those are the situations wherein I would say we focus on building innovation as part of the culture. And I spoke about independently productive. We started early on. But I think these are some of the things we've done, having industry talks, tech talks. I don't think there's one answer to it. If they fail, of course, sitting down and doing our learnings to say, what did we do? I think we do those programs, we run it, we have Agile implemented. You got to be very quick and, there has to be collaboration. But I don't think the answer is yet fully formed. I think we need to do a lot more to be able to say that employees don't have fear of failure. I don't think we are there yet. Would we like to be? Yes. Where you can tinker, fail fast, and move on and have your idea, ideated and do different things. Does that answer your question, Samir?
No, absolutely. I think what I think you largely touched upon, I think, was riveting because, as you rightly said, there is no one window for innovation. And while you gave your own experience, failure today in all such research and innovation endeavors is not a taboo. It's an accepted thing as long as you rightly said you don't repeat that kind of a thing. And then there's a process, it's a journey kind of a thing. When you try to kind of do some what we call rapid experimentations in terms of really seeing whether it works, it doesn't work, change, pivot, and kind of move on with something else. One of the thing over there, Supriya, and I'm mindful of the time as well as the questions are streaming, is there's a very kind of an open-ended question about what are the challenges or pitfalls today GCCs should be aware of which could stunt their growth journey in India?
Wow.
I'm assuming this is not specific to any Black Swan event. It's like a very
Sure.
of a direct thing about some of the inadequacies if it exists today largely. And again, it's a generic question. So would love to hear your thoughts, please.
You know, there are enough theories written, there's enough literature to say, what is it that, the CEOs, what are the top 3-4 things that occupy them? And I think GCC heads would have obviously a lot of those too. I would say continue to do the same thing, not innovating. What is innovative? Innovation is creative destruction. Let go the old, pave way for the new. The mundane old way of doing things can stop and something new and innovative can be brought in that will perhaps give us higher productivity, greater customer experience, ease and efficiency, and so on and so forth. And maybe a completely new different space. So I think not innovating is going to be scary for us. That I think is number one on my mind. Thinking technology can solve a lot of things for us. Each GCC is different. Each of us have different operating models. Each of us are dealing in different sectors. So there is, for some, let's say the hyperscalers, the Google and Amazons of the world, for them data is the data-driven culture. They have really exemplified it in so many different ways. For us, probably for some of the other, data is part of the story. It's still complementing. We are in the business, let's do a chatbot, let's enhance a user experience here. I think those are the things we are attempting. So continuing to infuse new technologies, but also continuing to have a people strategy, a talent strategy, and continuing to marry both and therefore have a phased approach. And in today's times, an accelerated is going to be the number 2. I think if you don't take people along, if you don't put people first, it's not going to work. Because new technologies can come in, but my adaptation, my learning, my usage of new technologies is going to depend on my ability of the human resources to be able to scale. So I think that is going to be the second. The third is going to be being very, true to the reality. I think it's being humble, authentic, the servant leadership. You are catering to them. Your job is to be a servant of the resources of the future, to your customers. I think constantly being humble, checking your ego at the door, being vulnerable and saying, I don't have all the answers, but going across and getting them. And vulnerable is not weak. I think embodying all of those cultural, very simple leadership traits. And simple is not easy, mind you, it's not. It's just simple, but it's not easy. But continuing to work on yourself, I think keeping these 3, and if you fail to do that, like you said beautifully, then the culture comes tumbling down like a pack of cards. So technology, taking people along and continuing to work on culture, not being able to do that and getting your playbook right is something that I would worry. Like today, we're all working from home and saying, no, the government has opened, come back to work 100%, I want you back. And forgetting what we learned, that work from home is possible. Let's not put people for 5 hours in traffic and get to work when that job can be done. So what are the learnings? Winston Churchill said, if there's a crisis and you don't learn from it, it's so sad. So I think learning that, essencing it, and making sure that you flow with the times, your strategies are nimble, your execution is excellent, is going to be some of the key things I would say we need to focus on to stay relevant.
Very well said. One of the conversation within the GCC side of the leadership is always about talent, and we would be doing gross injustice if we don't talk about talent. And I also want to build rather blend that with the question which has come in. Now, specifically, 1,200 plus GCC in India employing 1 million plus talent workforce, which is almost 30% of our entire IT technology workforce. Hugely kind of a, let's say, talented marquee set of workforce working. How does one go about nurturing this talent? How does one go about kind of building this talent to the next level kind of a thing? And also over there, as you rightly said in the earlier part of your narrative, the exponential technologies switch, obsolescence over there. Now, there is also a facet amongst the talent today that they want to work with the best and the greatest of the technologies. So, how does, as a GCC leader, one needs to really consider this whole talent strategy of not only just acquiring, but nurturing, engaging, and rightfully what you said, really building that talent to the next level in terms of few notches up?
Great question, and you're right. We need to touch a little bit upon talent. Like we have the problem solving to say it's a great problem to solve, but let's break it down and chunk it, and let's deal with those chunks. I would say talent is an overarching big umbrella that we need to deal with, but let's break it into pieces that you and I understand. Because overall, there is no one strategy that is going to fit. There is the new hires that we spoke about. How do you deal with that? So when we go to the campuses to recruit, we need to look at that differently. While somebody can join in a kind of job, because that is great to work in a environment, but very quickly they want to move up. If somebody's joined in validation, they want to move up to development. Somebody's great experience in development, they want to move up to the architect role. So I think constantly being in touch with them and having those mappings done to say how to do, and every company has their own career models, but putting the spirit behind those, the soul behind those, and making sure that's available, discussions are on, and it's what's written is also done in practice. I think that's one way of dealing with the university hires. Constantly move them. There are great company programs. I remember GE used to have Edison engineering programs. I think just tinkering with that and making sure that part is done. There is the senior talent, which is middle and transitioning to senior. There's a different way of dealing with them. Today, we know when you go to webinars, when you go to seminars, it's great learning out of it. But however, coaching is picking up as a culture, which is my specific input on what I need. So we did something, we started a coaching cohort within our Indian realm to say, let's get 1820, the next year talent, and see how we can build them. And each of them are different. So we're starting on a coaching journey, bringing them together I think that's a separate strategy for them. Offering functional paths to people. You can grow in the leadership way and be a general manager, or you can be a functional architect and be really an A subject matter expert. I think allowing for those to happen. So I think there are multiple ways, Samir, of doing it. Having constant new infusion and, curriculum on new technologies. Everybody wants to get their hands on new technology. What is machine learning all about? What are these algorithms? I want to write that. You look at a self-driving truck now. From self-driving car, we are moving to, technology is looking at self-driving trucks. Oh my God, your 1 hour is generating 4 terabytes of data, edge computing. There are these fascinating new things that are happening in the world. Bringing in some of those curriculums, academia collaborations, BITS Pilani offers some of these, which are there, IAC offers. So I think, again, back to industry, academia, what works, at what level. I would definitely make a point about gender diversity. Look at, sometimes women want to take slow, sometimes they want to take fast. So we touched upon in the early part of the thing, we don't know what people want. My simple question is, ask them. It's not that complicated. Ask, and when they talk, listen. They will tell you what they want. And I would love to see, Samir, in your and my time, I would love to see, I've seen technology blueprints, I've seen strategy blueprints. It would really warm my heart if I was to see a talent blueprint of new technologies, current, each employee, and all that mapped. I would say that I haven't seen that yet. But if someone has it, some company has it, I think that's the recipe and the sauce for future success. But I think that's where we need to marshal our troops and our energies.
Great. There's so much to talk, Supriya, and we have a time to keep. But I must admit, this is our 24th in the series of CXOs. And personally, I have interacted with many of them. With all due regards to others, really, anyone has opened up to the extent what you opened up. And it was like Supriya not only as a leader for Western Digital, Supriya as a leader in her own avatar, where she's ready to kind of accept what she learned. Also, in the due course of 60 minutes, you talked about the failures. You also talked about vulnerability, but you also talked about how you overcame that. You talked about continuous feedback. You talked, in a nutshell, you gave us the code of the GCC leadership like a playbook. And if I take that and I summarize, and one of the things which I also realized, the way you kind of anecdotally, in an anecdotal manner, you built up the narrative so kind of, let's say, in a solid manner, where we touched upon all the facets of the leadership, right from a strategic aspects to empathy, resilience, culture, inclusivity, the talent piece. Now, what I can really understand from there, look, it's a very arduous task, and you're performing it beautifully. Wish you loads of success. And also, one must say at this juncture, Supriya, thank you so much, because not only it's revealing, it's personally so gratifying to understand how a leader opens up and talk in a very, very, I would say, manner, which is just what I call a very, very heartiest kind of, let's say, talk, which is just touching our senses, emotions, and our intellect. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samir. Wonderful being here. And you can only be yourself. And I think accepting yourself and loving yourself and working on yourself is perhaps the only way to go forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.